Hi, are you finding yourself lingering in a situation that is no longer a fit for you? It might be a relationship, it could be a job or a career path that you're on, and you just know you need to do something about it, but it's been difficult to leave for a variety of reasons. Well, hi, I'm Elaine Alpert, and welcome to Journey Back to Joy TV. I'm a trainer and coach, and an author and an artist, and I run a nonprofit where we are dedicated to helping women who've been through a lot of big challenges to reclaim joy and purpose in their life. And I'm going to just apologize up front. I've got tree pollen in my throat. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, in an early spring, and I have my tea to help me out. So today we're going to talk about how we end up betraying ourselves when we don't know how to leave the situation that we're in, or we can't make the decision. We keep staying um, in a job, or if we have a business, we keep an employee for way too long, or a contractor. I was just talking with my husband, Tom, about this very thing, like knowing when it's time to say, okay, that's enough. That's an end, that's a completion, and when we need to actually stay longer. And those of you who've joined me live, I can see the nodding already. You know what I'm talking about when we're making choices out of um, ways of being and thinking and believing that aren't really serving us. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about a few things, a couple of tools, and also what gets us into this strange place that we find ourselves in. And one of these tools is the Enneagram. If you're not familiar with it, I just love it. It's an ancient tool that is not just a personality test. It actually has many, many layers going back to Gurdjieff and before that, of looking at ourselves as human beings. And there are 9 types in the Enneagram, and I am a type 7. A type 7 is the enthusiast. So you may feel that coming across when I'm talking. I get very enthusiastic about what I'm interested in. But one of the things that goes on for a type 7 is that we tend to not ever, ever, ever want to be trapped in a situation. We want to be sure that we're free to move around, to change, to do things that we really want to do. And as soon as we start feeling that sense of, oh my gosh, I have to stay here, we start feeling trapped. And the tendency is to run from the situation. And I can tell you that in my early life, I did a lot of that. I would get myself into a job and enjoy it for a little while, and then it would wear its way thin with me, and there you go, I was gone. So I did that with relationships, I did it in businesses, I did it just across the board. And when I began to learn this about myself, that running wasn't the answer, I started to look at how to stay. And as you may know, there's a lot in Buddhism about learning to stay and to be present, to be pay attention to the current moment that you're in. And that is the work of a type 7. Now, all of the types have things that they're working on, but this has been my particular bailiwick all my life. And what I found as I got older and committed myself to staying in situations and staying in relationships, is sometimes I did the opposite. I stayed too long. I didn't know how to get out because I was afraid of running. I was afraid I'd be in that old pattern, and I wasn't really looking at everything that I needed to look at, or I wasn't giving the other person enough of a chance, or. And so I ended up staying in things, in places, in organizations, in jobs, in careers that I really didn't want to be with. Just to give you an example, when I was in my 20s, I was trained in design and art, and ended up creating these really large sculptural pieces for corporate spaces and public spaces. And it was kind of amazing to be there at the age of whatever it was, 23, 25, something like that, creating those things. But I got to the point where it just didn't feel very fulfilling. Like I was making beautiful stuff, but I wanted to do something more with my life. And life came along and kind of made the decision for me, which is what happens when we're staying in something that we don't want to be with. Something happens in our lives to wake us up. We get a life shock of some kind that says, hey, this is where you are. Pay attention to what's going on here. Is this really what you want? So, what happened to me, just by total shock and surprise, is that my mother died unexpectedly in the middle of a huge project that I was on. And it was like I don't know, $150,000 project way back then. And I had no way to really get out of it because I had signed a contract. And there I was, in this situation of a lot of grief and pain over losing my mom, and at the same time needing to pull this big contract off. So it really put it in my face when I got done with the contract and the piece was hanging where it needed to hang. I really took a long, hard look at what I wanted to do with my life. And that was back in 1985. So I'm dating myself here, but 1985. Yeah. And I went looking for how do I find what really matters to me? Where's my purpose now that I've been so badly shaken with the loss of my mother? And that's when I found the More to Life program and took the weekend and got really involved in that program and became a trainer in that program, which I have done since 1998. But it took that wake up call for me to really sit down and say, okay, things are not the way I want them to be. What do I want? And I left the art world and went totally in the healing world. So much to say about all of that change in my life. And you may be reflecting on times in your life where you've committed to a certain path or a person, and you stayed maybe a little longer than you wanted to stay, and perhaps something happened and you found yourself in a situation where this decision was being made for you in a sense, or the wake up call was calling you into something else. So why do we stay longer than we know to be good for ourselves? Well, obviously, sometimes in a relationship, we're afraid of getting hurt, afraid of causing hurt, of causing the other person pain if we leave. So we stay in order to help them feel better or to not rock the boat. So if you're somebody who avoids conflict, you may have found yourself in that kind of situation before. But how do you know if the relationship is worth saving? Well, we'll get to that a little later. But first, let's talk about how these things tend to play out. Because if you found yourself in another kind of situation where maybe you run a business or you are managing people and you're having a really hard time calling it quits with the position that you're in, or letting someone go on your staff, and you keep letting them stay because maybe you don't want to hurt their feelings, but also maybe you don't want to mess up the system that you have going, like it's going good enough, and maybe you think you can make it better. Or maybe you're the kind of person that thinks, well, I'll just fix it. I'll fix this situation. That's how I'm going to be able to stay, is I'll figure out a way to make this all work. So whether it's at a job or in a marriage, you can find yourself doing that. What about in friendships where things aren't working so well? An interesting thing yesterday happened that surprised me and actually led me to this very conversation today. After I wrote my book last May and released it, I started being contacted by all sorts of people that I hadn't seen in a very long time, and many women reaching out to me because they'd had a big loss and they wanted to talk about it. So all of a sudden, I found my inbox overflowing with people that were reaching out to me. And when I say reaching out to me, I'm talking about people all the way back to grade school, who found out about it on social media or something and just wanted to touch base. And I was finding myself reading these emails thinking, oh, I really want to talk to that person. I really want to talk to that person. but I didn't really have time to follow through. Well, someone contacted me from the UK that I have not seen in probably 20 something years. And she did what a number of people did at that time. She sent me this email that was so heartfelt. And she wanted to talk to me about the book and what it meant to her. And she was really opening the door to a relationship. And I didn't know her that well. I didn't know her that well 20 years ago. Well, I wrote her back and said, I'm so sorry. I'm really busy right now. I'm not able to, um, have a conversation right now. I'll get back to you. Well, you know how that goes sometimes when you're super busy. I never got back to her. Okay, I never got back to her. And then yesterday, I got this email from her, and she said, I'm a person that when the energy doesn't feel alive in a relationship, I call it to an end to it. I just closed the door on that. And she said, I just want to really thank you for the quality of your book. It's made this change in my life. She told me all about the change. And she said, I just want to complete with you. And I was kind of shaken by that because I think of how infrequently I do that in my life. I not be that proactive. I just kind of let things go, by the way they go. But here's somebody actually taking the time to say, I just want you to know I'm not upset. I'm not angry with you. I'm just like drawing a boundary for myself because that's what I need to do for me. It was a powerful thing. It made me sit there and think, huh, I wonder where in my life I have incompletes with people and there are loose ends hanging out there and I'm not doing anything to close that. And one of the things that she said in that email was that the reason that she does it is she's monitoring the quality of her own energy. And that when she's got a lot of loose ends in her life, particularly with people, where she's invested some time and energy and they're not responding back, she feels an energy drain, like it's kind of like a loose thing out there that's running, where she's connected in some way and it's not coming back. So at first I felt a little defensive when I got that email. I thought, well, I need to tell her about all the stuff that happened. I got COVID, blah, blah, so I'm writing that email and I went, wait a minute, let me stop here. I don't need to explain anything. She's being so clean and clear with me. And there's nothing in this email that is hard to hear, except that someone is drawing a line with me. And I just sat with it and thought, what a beautiful thing. What a beautiful lesson. And so I'm taking that she gave me, not knowing that it would be part of today's show or that I would be passing it on to other people and saying to you, where in your life are you finding yourself with some loose ends with people? Or loose ends with a situation that you're in. And you're thinking, it would be really good if I brought some closure, but I just haven't taken the time to do it. Or I'm afraid to do it. Or it just stirs things up if I go into it. So I'll just leave it where it is. So that's one piece I wanted to bring today. The other is that I think I have stayed in things past the point of staying being good because I feel guilty. I fall into thinking I am doing something I shouldn't do. Like they want me there, they want to be with me. And so I need to, I don't know, sort of be in half in and half out, have one foot in, one foot out, instead of really assessing, does this friendship, does this situation align with my greater purpose? And when I'm not aligned with my greater purpose, it's easy to feel guilty and responsible for other people. Make sense? So I noticed that whenever I feel guilty in a relationship, something else comes alongside in its resentment. My teacher, Brad Brown, long time ago said that guilt and resentment are married to each other. And I believe that's true because if I'm feeling guilty because I'm not doing something for somebody or being there for somebody or an organization or some sort of career thing I've committed to, I start feeling annoyed. I'm kind of like they're responsible for the way I feel instead of me. And so it's always a notice for me. Am I feeling frustrated and because I'm really guilty and really releasing myself from that kind of restriction on my energy? So if I let go of that, if I notice what the guilt's about, then I can free up my own energy. Okay, if you're somebody who likes to fix stuff, you're in a situation right now, or you have been in a situation because you're a really good manager. You know how to get into a situation and find the holes and plug them. If you're that kind of person, which, I'm probably speaking to a bunch of women right now like that, because really conscious women on a healing path are very capable, largely very capable. And so when we look out into our landscape, we see lots of things that can be tampered with just a little bit, tweaked. And that can be a great thing, a great skill to beef something up that needs support. But where it becomes a problem is when we tie our sense of being needed to what's going on out there. So I noticed that whenever I start plugging holes or trying to fix a relationship or make it something better, am I doing it because the need is mine? And I want to feel like I show up as somebody capable and on top of things, and I see and they don't see it, all that stuff that I can play out. Or am I really in a clear space when I'm doing that? So something to notice in relationships. Are you in a place in a relationship where you're filling some holes and you're tired of doing it because you notice it's a drain for you? So if that's the case, you may be being called just in this very moment with me talking about it to take a look at whether it's a relationship you want to change up. Okay. Here's the way that I discover what kind of state that I'm in. I've talked in this show, and you can go back and watch a couple shows. I've mentioned the box, that state that we get into when we're really shut down with our feelings and our energy is tight. We don't feel open. We feel conflicted and angry or guilty or some sort of unclear state. Well, today I want to talk about, well, obviously, I'll back up and say, obviously, outside of the box is the opposite. We feel open, we feel free, we're warm, connecting. It's like where we want to live. But when we find ourselves in that box, I want to expand it a little bit more today because there are actually concentric boxes that we can find ourselves in. These nesting boxes, the Russian dolls, you open one and there's another one inside and another one inside. So imagine that with the box, that there are a series of boxes inside this big one. And at the core of these boxes, the one that is the tightest and most constricting is the box of impossibility. The box of impossibility. And this is where I know where I get to, where the whole thing the only thing I can go to is I can't do it. I just can't. I can't be in this relationship. I can't make a decision. I can't decide what I want to do. I just feel so overwhelmed and everything just seems way too much. So on a psychological level, that could be depression. We could be in a state of depression. That might be a temporary situational depression, and it might be something more serious, something that goes on for a couple of weeks or longer, would be a more serious kind of depression that really needs addressing. But that box of impossibility, if you're just noticing that you're in there, the way to get out, it can be kind of tricky because when we're in that tightest box, a lot of times we don't know we're there because we look around and all the walls look like they're this close to us and they're dark. And it just seems like this is the way it is. This is reality. I don't see a way out. You're talking to me about leaving this relationship. How could I possibly leave this relationship? I have children. I have bills. I have whatever it is that's you're convinced there's no way out. Or you're in a job and you're thinking, or business and thinking, I can't make a different decision. No way, because I've got too many people depending on me. So how could I possibly find something that's more valuable for me to do? I don't have time for that. That's the state of impossibility. So if you're one step out from that, you're in the box of survival. And the box of survival is it's the sense of it is like you're hanging on with your fingernails. You know, you're in that state of survival. There is a real neediness inside this box. I need to stay here. I you don't understand. There, let me give you all the reasons. There's a like almost a it seems pathological, that kind of need, because it's so the feeling in the body is tight and constricted, but you're a little bit out from impossibility. The next box is the one I'd say is my favorite box to be in. Just kidding. I just end up going here a lot, and it's the box of obligation. And I find that a lot of women spend time in this box. This is the box of I have to. I have to do this. I have to prove that I'm right here. I have to make sure that everybody around me knows that I'm available. I have to do what I said I would do. There's a lot of proving energy in this box. And it's confusing because we often see that there's a need to be where we are. And so there's a sense of duty. So the reason women fall into this box a lot is I think it's generational. We feel a sense of duty to do certain things as women. And we could go down the list, couldn't we, of all the things that women have been told they're supposed to be and they're supposed to do. And this could be an entire show on its own, because everything from what you're supposed to do with your career, how you're supposed to be in leadership, the way you're supposed to be in the family, in your relationship, how you're supposed to be with your sexuality, how your body is supposed to look. I mean, it just goes on and on. So we will be doing some shows on this, actually. I'm going to be doing a whole thing on body shame and what goes on for women around the body. So I hope you tune in for that coming up. It's a huge topic. I could literally lead a week-long retreat on this topic. So this box of obligation is so familiar to us, we don't even know that we're there. And I just want to push on you a little bit to notice as you go through the next 24 hours, 48 hours, are you finding yourself in a situation where you are really believing that you have to do something? In other words, you've lost your sense of choice about what you're doing. So you might be thinking, well, yes, I have to bring in a certain amount of money, or I have to tend to someone that is needing my attention. I'm a caregiver. How can I possibly step away from that? The difference in the energy from the box of obligation to what I'm going to talk about in a minute is night and day. Because when we're in choice, there's a whole other energy that we can enjoy and be in and not feel the drain of energy. But first, there's one more box. And in some ways, this box is the trickiest one in our culture of all, the box of desire. We're even told, what are your desires? Follow your desires. Whatever you desire, go for it. So we live in a culture, particularly in the United States, where we are told in so many ways from the time that we're small children that following our desires is important. So here again is the difference in the state of being, how we're doing internally with what it is that we want. So I like to call this the box of I want, because it feels like I need to get what I want. I deserve to have what I want. After all I've done, I should be able to get what I want. Hey, I'm at this age, I've worked a long time. What's wrong with having what I want? So people create vision boards to go after what they want. You've probably done that before. I've done them for years. I've got things on my vision board right now that I'm interested in having in my life. But then we jump from that box of desire that's so familiar to our culture outside the box altogether. And when we're able to actually leave all of those boxes and live outside of that box in a state of choice and willingness, and the internal state is one of inner satisfaction, finding a deep joy within, knowing who we are, and being able to choose why we're in the relationship that we're in, or being able to decide for real, I've stayed long enough and it's time for me to leave this situation. Being able to discern, that's where outside of the box comes into play. So when I'm in that state of obligation, I'm outside of knowing my choice, feeling at peace with being able to choose. I don't even know there is a choice. And when I'm in the want, and that kind of sort of energy of craving and pushing to get what I want, and making sure that I push you out of the way so that I can manipulate my way into getting what I want, or I talk you out of something so I can get what I want. I'm not in the state of wanting out of this pure and clean intention that I have for what I want to create in my life. In that old state, I've lost that thread. So when we're deciding, do I want to stay or do I want to leave? I want to just recap that the real reason that we end up staying versus leaving is not security, it's not money, it's not to keep from hurting someone. It really is these innermost states that we live with that confuse us and get us very mixed up about our choices and our decisions. So an easy way to know whether you're staying or leaving out of an obligation one way or the other, or out of a desire one way or the other, or you're stuck in impossibility, or you need something so badly that you're not gonna make that decision, is to notice how you're feeling in your body. Just straight up, the easiest way to know. If you know how to check your internal state and you know whether you're feeling some sort of clunk inside, you're feeling trapped energy somewhere in your body, you can simply do a body scan. And although as conscious women, we know this, we've done it for years, many of us, we forget. We get ourselves trapped in one of those boxes, and we're like, this body scan thing is, we don't even know it exists. So a reminder for me today, if you're needing to hear it, is to just sit quietly and pay attention as you think about this relationship or the situation that you're in. Bring it in, bring it close in. Think about something that has just happened in that relationship, a life shock moment, a moment in time when something happened you didn't want or expect. And let yourself see how you feel as you sit and reflect on that. And then what are you noticing about what you're telling yourself about what's happened? That's a whole subject for another show. I will take you deeper into that so that you can discern what that chatter is that's speaking to you 24/7, how it's informing you, whether you're in a box or you're outside the box. It makes it really cut and dry. But that simple thing of just checking, what state am I in, will help to deliver you into a cleaner, more free space, an open space to make your decision. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful that you've been here. Thank you to everyone who's present live. And if you are live, you're invited, after I stop the recording, to stay on and have a conversation about this topic.
All right. Bye for now. See you next week.